God's peace, God's strength, and God's grace be with you. Thank you for joining me briefly this afternoon, where I'm going to, as promised, be doing the final part from my new book, COVID-19, End Times Hysteria in the Christian Church, where I'm talking about how the prophetic movement is really crippling its advancement and its credibility due to relying on conspiracy theories and due to actually to the point where people are taking things that they get from conspiracy theory websites and they are prophesying them as if the Lord said it, when in rather being honest about their sources and their origins, they are telling people that the Lord has told them these things when that is not the case. And if it is the case that the Lord is saying these things, unfortunately, there are so many voices speaking, so many voices that are unauthorized speaking, that it's difficult to find voices that have not been um, immersed or mixed up in misinformation campaigns. So thank you for joining me again. If you can give me a hello, let me know you're here. Uh, and we're going to go ahead and get straight into it. So today, in this one, it's going to be a bit different. Okay, I'm going to be pretty academic here today. I'm going to give you some information that is going to help you understand exactly what's going on. So, we're going to be dealing with what is COVID 19. We're going to be dealing with COVID 19 versus the flu. And we're going to be dealing with the impacts of the disease. And then we're going to be hitting some conspiracy theories that I will be unraveling. So, you will have the educator and the um, data analysis person in me today. But it's good to have this information. It will help you. And I'm not purporting to be a medical professional. So my background is in artificial intelligence and machine learning. And because of that, I had the privilege to work in some biomedical engineering labs and also do some environmental modeling and storm tracking and things like that. So, aka, I can read academic research in the sciences and present that information. But I'm not a medical professional, for full disclaimer. But you will see everything that I say, you'll see sources cited on the information. So you can go to those sources and get further information for yourself. So, without further ado, let us have this brief little discussion here. So, a lot of people putting out information about COVID 19 don't even know what COVID 19 even stands for. So, COVID 19 stands for Coronavirus 2019, denoting the type of virus that we're dealing with and the year that it was discovered. Um, and so, coronaviruses are not new. They've been with us for a very, very long time. This is what we call a novel or a new or unique coronavirus that we're facing. COVID 19 is. Um, and so a coronavirus is essentially the word corona is Latin for crown, and they're called coronaviruses because when you look at them under a microscope, they appear to have somewhat of a crown like structure. So that's why they've been deemed coronaviruses. And these classes of viruses are actually zoonotic, which means that they originated from animals. Okay, they originated from animals, and then they were transferred to humans. So we've been dealing with various coronaviruses for a while. A lot of common colds and even the flu at times can be caused by a coronavirus, and these viruses typically affect the respiratory system of humans. And so this new, at least new to us, coronavirus, COVID 19, SARS CoV 2, uh, it is very, very, it's very interesting. One of the reasons why we are fairly confident that this is a zoonotonic virus is because 96% of the genome of the virus is actually shared with a coronavirus that was found in bats a few years prior. So it is 96% the same exact virus that was found in bats. And so the literature believes that the virus went from a bat to an intermediary animal and then to the first human. And so that is the origin. Now, how it got to humans is not necessarily something that has been ironed out yet. So from the initial study, it was assumed that these viruses, that this uh, version of the virus came from a it came from a wet market in China. Now, what is a wet market? These are markets that are all across the world, particularly in developing countries, that are places where people pretty much sell meat and sell animals. And the thing that makes these markets potentially dangerous is that you have a lot of animal excrement, feces, plus all type of stuff out in the open, and then you have multiple animals of different types and backgrounds. And then in the case of China, you also have wild animals. So it's a breeding ground for viruses to be passed from one animal to the next. And then you have humans in the mix. So it's a breeding ground for zoonotonic viruses to be passed from all of these animals to us at some point. And so the initial view was that there was this particular wet market where several people who contracted the virus all had ties to. But after further study, they discovered that a significant portion, if I remember correctly, 14 people, did not have any ties to that wet market. And so there is less confidence that that is the origin story in terms of it being transmitted to humans. So they're still researching that, still trying to figure that out. But that's kind of where that is. At the end of the day, you have a virus that's gone from animals to humans. Now, this is, this is not going to be the end of that. Well, I'll get to that later. But that's what's going on with COVID-19. We may not know how it got to humans, but we know how it started. It comes essentially from a bat. Now, here are the stages of the virus. Stage one. Oh, I copied my chart wrong. Stage one is dry cough, cold-like symptoms. Nothing special, nothing spectacular, nothing crazy about that in the first stage of the virus. Then in stage two, that's when things start to get interesting. You have shortness of breath and you have hypoxia, which means essentially that there's a region of tissue in the body or some area that cannot get enough oxygen, hence the need for things like ventilators. So as the virus progresses in stages, things get more difficult for the person that has the virus, and things get more dangerous for them. So stage three is where it really, really um, gets bad. So these things that I have on stage three, they are pretty much refer to organ system failure or dysfunction. Shock, and so it can cause complete failure of the cardiovascular system, respiratory system. So it depends on just how the virus progressed and how the virus moved. But it goes in those stages and gets progressively worse. And so that's why it should not be confused with the flu. It is distinct and is different from the flu. Um, and it can have fatal consequences. I believe, I don't think we've hit 100,000 yet, but we are certainly close to 100,000 deaths in the United States if we haven't hit 100,000 by now. And so let me actually give you the exact number that we're at. Um, while that loads. So we shouldn't confuse it with the flu. We shouldn't look at it as the same thing. Particularly, there are some similarities between the two viruses, but they are nowhere near the same thing. Um, one of the main similarities is that they are more prone to affect people who are immunocompromised. They're more prone to have impacts on those who are vulnerable, um, and so the fact of the matter is, particularly with this virus, people who have diabetes, cancer, severe obesity, um, different pre-existing conditions, heart problems, things like that make someone more susceptible to falling to the progression of the disease. And the way it works is whatever the virus, the way it progresses, it essentially has the ability to exacerbate whatever problems are going on with that individual. So if someone comes in with heart problems, because of the nature of the virus, it can accelerate those heart problems and it can actually shift them into death because of how the virus works. And I'll get to a conspiracy theory on that in a second. But that is essentially what we're dealing with, what we're going on in a brief, synopsis. I'm not going to overrun you with so much information, but that's kind of what we're dealing with. And so I just want to compare it to the flu very briefly. In the average flu season, and it's difficult to track the number of flu deaths that we have. I forgot to put my source on the slide for that, but you can look at the CDC and some other places to get those numbers. But between 12 and 50,000 deaths in a given flu season. And 2017, 2018, we had a peak of 80,000 deaths, and that's across the full spectrum of the flu season. And so flu season could be 13 weeks, it could be longer, pretty much fall, potentially to early spring. But COVID-19, with extreme mitigation measures, with social distancing, with shutting down the economy, with all of this discomfort, with stay at home, uh, shelter in place orders, with all of that, even still, in like 3 months, COVID-19 reached 50,000 deaths in the United States of America. So, and what we're at like 1.6 million cases currently. And now in terms of deaths we're almost at 100,000, and that's with all of the extreme measures that have been taken. And so the reproductive number, which means the number of people that you're likely to infect if you have the virus, last I checked was between like 2 and 3. So it spreads very quickly, and it should not be belittled, right? Because these people suddenly died in a matter of 90 days. We already had about 50,000 people dead in the United States alone, and we're not even talking about the whole world. And we're talking about after doing all of this extreme work to preserve life, all of these people still passed away. So we should not belittle it and compare it to the flu. And the flu is also it's not like it's a weak little virus. Thousands of people die from the flu as well, but this virus has the potential to infect and kill more people. Why is that? we not only do we not have a vaccine at all, we don't have any reliable treatments at this point, regardless of what your Facebook feed or Google searches tell you. There's no reliable um, treatment at this point, and that's why people are still dying all across the world. If it were different, it would not be that way. And so that's really what we have going on in terms of COVID-19 versus the flu. So it's not something to be played with. It's not something to be belittled, to take lightly, because of the potential for what it can do, and also what it's already done. So now, in these final few minutes, I'm going to get to the conspiracy. I'm just going to deal with three of them very briefly. Three conspiracy theories that are very, very popular. Um, and so this will kind of give you some academic guidance on why those things are not so. And if you just go on Wikipedia and you look at the number of conspiracy theories regarding COVID-19, the sheer number alone, the volume of information alone will blow your mind with how many people are saying random things about this without having any understanding, just putting their opinion, just putting whatever their flesh feels like putting out there in their gossip, and not having any information. So I'm going to deal with three of these very briefly that I discuss also briefly in the book that I'm releasing on Saturday. So one very popular one is that COVID-19 is caused by 5G. Okay, there's several problems with that. So most people talking about COVID-19 and 5G can't even tell you what 5G stands for. And so 5G, and that's a problem, right? Because if you are going to be writing conspiracy theory blogs, if you're going to be making posts, you should be able to understand exactly what you're talking about, why we should listen to you, and the details, because the ramifications of whatever information that you're saying can be life or death for someone. And so that's why even wrote this book and doing this series, because what counsel you give someone can literally be life and death. And so you need to make sure that you're getting the right counsel and you're paying attention. Now, it is scientifically impossible. I'm just going to jump to the point here. Scientifically impossible for COVID-19 to be spread by 5G. So I'm going to explain to you what 5G is, briefly how it works, why COVID-19 is not going through it, and what you should actually be concerned about with 5G. Because there are things that you should be concerned about with 5G, and the misinformation conversation is causing us to be distracted from what we actually need to be concerned about with 5G and other cellular technologies. 5G stands for the fifth generation of the radio technology that runs our cell phone system and other devices. So each generation has breakthroughs in speed, delivery of information, and they typically change how we use our devices. So, for instance, 3G was really big because that is what really made the mobile internet really possible and really strong. And so each generation, then you have 4G. That's what made it so that we can do things like mobile streaming. So because of 4G, you can watch Netflix and Hulu and all those things on your phone. We can do Facebook Live via mobile, YouTube Live. That streaming, the streaming capabilities came out with the fourth generation, and the fifth generation is actually supposed to be the most transformative as technologies continue to emerge and come from all over. Because of the speed, we're going to be able to transmit data at rates that are crazy. And so when you have like Internet of Things and all these technologies, your refrigerator is going to be ordering milk for you when you start running out of milk, and all kind of stuff. So it's just a whole bunch of transformative technologies. Your self-driving cars, They'll be connected to the 5G network. It's just going to be a whole bunch going on. So our phones work through radio waves, and so that means that radiation is emitted to transfer data and information. Now, the type of waves that is transferred is called. Now the phrase is losing me. Um, Non-ionizing radiation. Okay, and so I'm not going to get into the details of all that, but pretty much what that means is that the thing that we would be concerned about by 5G and all, cell phone radio wave technology would be the radiation. Um, is it causing cancer, tumor? So when you're dealing with radiation, you can think of um, cancerous concerns, right? It causing cells to multiply uncontrollably in the body. So that would be the main concern. Now, the consensus had been for a significant amount of time that there was really no need to be concerned about 5G or 4G, 3G, 2G, about any radio wave technology that we're using. There hadn't been any empirical evidence to suggest that these things are cancerous. But more recent scientific research is suggesting that we are being exposed to too much radiation. One of the papers that I read recently actually talked about how they potentially think that some of these radiation amounts are being linked to sperm damage, certain type of cancers. So there is some cause for concern. And not to mention the fact that there's a whole consensus of scientists that got together concerning 5G to discuss the fact that they believe that the exposure rates of radiation for 5G and the other radio wave technologies are too high. Okay, um, so that is what the actual concern in the scientific community is that we're being exposed to levels of radiation that's too high, and they want the FTC to amend their regulations in the telecommunications industry regarding radiation exposure. So that is something that is of concern. Now, with regard to COVID-19 coming over radio waves. Uh, COVID-19, as we discussed, this novel coronavirus is a virus. Okay, it's a virus. So viruses come to attack, right, hosts that they can survive on and hosts that they can live on. And so even viruses don't even live on the surfaces of, like these type of viruses. Um, they're not designed to live on surfaces for long ranges of time, let alone travel through radio waves. And so what you're talking about, the static, is that better? I don't know. I can't see. Um, so what people are, if COVID-19 could travel through radio waves, that means that viruses have evolved to the point where they can actually teleport. And if that's the case, then we have a whole bunch of problems, and we probably need to figure out how we can teleport too. So that's not a concern that viruses are jumping into the airwaves and causing people to get viruses. The concern is cancer. The concern. Oh, okay, you good? All right. So yeah, there's little Eddie there making his rounds. Um, the concern is cancer. The concern is what are we doing to our bodies long term as we're exposing ourselves to all of this radiation. Is it really safe? And so some of the scientists got together and they said the research that was done to say that this radiation was safe, most of it was done in, oh, hey, Star. done in the 1980s. Okay, and they said that research is too old. We didn't know enough to be able to really understand enough about what's going on. So they are in favor of lowering telecommunication, lowering the exposure rates that telecommunication companies are allowed. And even the video that was circulating around, they were saying that it's like a 5G pole that people were destroying in China. It's not a 5G pole, it's a light pole. You can look at it, and that footage is from the protests that were going on in Hong Kong in 2019. Fun fact, they're back protesting again. So any of us can download a video of something, go on Canva and add text to it, and we can start a new conspiracy theory if we so wish. So viruses are not jumping on through radio waves, and they don't even have a reason to do so because they'll die. Their objective is to live and to multiply. So they wouldn't, if even if they theoretically could, there wouldn't be any incentive for them to figure out how to do that because they're going to die, and they rather live, right? They rather live and multiply and destroy hosts. So that's what they do. So that is the 5G. Um, that's the 5G one. One of my favorites is that this is all uh, Bill Gates' fault. Um, that Bill Gates, because he did that TED talk and he talked about viruses spreading in the next pandemic, uh, that's just like you seeing, that your spouse didn't put oil in the car and you're letting them know that the engine is going to blow out, right? Just because you see it ahead of time because of the facts, that doesn't mean that you've orchestrated. What's up? Oh, say hi to the people, I guess. Say hello. Say hello to the world. So, trying to find this. Oh, there we go. Here you go. So, it's the equivalent of you knowing that someone is doing something that is improper, uh, and letting them know ahead of time. Now you have to think about what Bill Gates does full time now. You know, he's been away from Microsoft for a long time. Bill Gates has devoted the majority of his time to fighting polio. So Bill Gates is a public health expert. Him and his foundation. They're all about trying to end the spread of certain diseases. So that's why he even had the credibility to speak on that. And so Bill Gates' position, albeit there are some things that are controversial, like tracking people and all that stuff, but I'm going to focus on, the idea that he's the author of it. So this conspiracy theory website put out this information that Bill Gates owns a patent to COVID-19. Well, first and foremost, there's no patent to COVID-19. It is the genome for the virus is publicly available. You can go and download it so that you can do research on it. So I do AI stuff, so I download it. And so I'm looking at all the genomes and all that stuff. So it's publicly available. It's free, right? And they try to make this connection with this Pillbright institution that got a grant from the Gates Foundation. They try to say because they gave him a grant that Bill Gates owns the patent to the virus. So several things there. One, there are several institutions that do research on coronaviruses. Why? So that when stuff like this happens, hopefully we'll have a vaccine. Unfortunately, we're not good this time. This type of research has to happen because this is not the last time that a coronavirus outbreak is going to happen. By any means necessary, 30 years of research has been putting that out there that governments should be prepared and should be ready, but none of them pretty much listened. None of them were ready to really handle this. Some responded well, some didn't. Ours did not. But so the patent that they cite is actually a patent for a vaccine for a coronavirus. Okay, it's a patent for a vaccine in a coronavirus. It is not the patent for COVID-19, because there is no patent for COVID-19. You can actually publicly view the patent that they have uh, for a thing to a vaccine to combat a coronavirus. You can view everything from the description to the genetic code. It's all there publicly available. So um, in other words, I know everybody wants to pick on Bill Gates, and there are probably some other things that we should probably be more concerned about. Gates and some of the billionaires with their views on food and all that stuff, but that's another topic. But he's not the author of the virus. He's not the creator of the virus, and so you have to even think if people were really uh, putting this whole thing together, it would be wise for them to already have the vaccine ready. The vaccine process is at least 18 months, and I pray that they find one eventually. But it's at least an 18-month process. So if it is a conspiracy, they really messed up because that thing should be out by now for them to be making money by now. And nobody wants to do the trials. Nobody wants to sign up. So it's not a good business to be in at this point. Um, but and then the last one I'm going to deal with, which I also talked about in the book. There are people who are running around saying that this whole thing. Less people are saying it now because more people keep dying. That this whole thing is a hoax. Nobody's dying. Hospitals are closing and all this stuff. Um, but and so they had this whole campaign to go film your hospital and to prove that it wasn't a disaster and everything was fine. But people don't. Yes, sir. You don't like that. Okay. So the thing is, people don't read. People don't read. So the CDC, the reason why there are less people in a lot of hospitals and less services going on, less people in the parking lots, people were saying that there's less people in the hospitals because it's all an illusion. It's all a sham. But the CDC released guidance to prevent the spread of the virus in hospitals. And so, in long story short, they told hospitals to end all elective procedures, all elective surgery. So if you don't need to have the procedure, you don't need to have the surgery, don't come in. Not only that, they limited visitation. You cannot have any visitors in the hospital. While Jordan was going to the OB appointments, I could not go in. I had to wait outside in the car. I was not allowed in. And even when you walk into the hospital, the first thing that they did is ask you a series of questions. They may check your temperature depending on how you respond and all that stuff. And if you respond the wrong way, they're sending you out to another hospital or to a specialized location that deals with COVID-19. So hospitals were asked to reduce their operations, their capacity, and there are even, like doctors and things that were laid off and all type of stuff that I learned about recently because of the reduction in services and the reduction in capacity. And you see the same thing that they're doing, the same thing they did for the CDC to lower the potential of spread. They released guidance for schools. I don't know if that's going to work for us because we have 20,000 schools in one class in South Carolina, where I am. But they released guidance that reduced the capacity of the hospitals, and so that's why there weren't a lot of people there, and that's why they'll probably continue to keep it that way. Because when there's an epidemic, when there's a pandemic, one of the major things that kills people is actually hospital capacity. Hospital capacity is one of the major problems because you don't have enough hospital beds to cover all of the patients, especially since most of our hospitals are underfunded and have trouble already anyway. So then you bring in some COVID-19 pandemic and you definitely don't have enough beds. You definitely don't have enough doctors. You definitely don't have enough nurses. And so one of the things Bill Gates talked about in that TED Talk was the need for programs like Hospital Corps, where people are ready and prepared to go into emergency situations to mitigate the crisis. So pretty much for a long time, you knocked it out that time. Uh, Pretty much for a long time, all your governments have been warned about this was coming, and about how to prepare and what to do. Very few of them made any adjustments to prepare for something like this. And the fact of the matter is, I know scientifically and prophetically that there are more pandemics to come uh, in the future. So if you're following me on the 100 Days of the Prophetic, I'm going to go in more detail on what those are specifically that are coming, and to make sure that you, at least somebody in the world, is prepared. But there's more to come. One major reason is climate change. The temperature of the earth is increasing. And what that means is also viruses that we could not get, we're going to be able to get. So this is the last thing that I'm going to explain, and I'll let you go. So as the temperature of the earth increases, um, well, let me start with this. The reason why, for instance, a bat was able to carry a coronavirus is that the temperature of a bat is very, very high. So when a virus enters their body, I think their temperature is like 105 degrees Fahrenheit, something like that. When a virus enters their body, it has to it's not effective, and it doesn't affect them. Similarly, our body temperature is very high, 98.6 degrees. A lot of the viruses and things that come into our body, they don't make any effect on us. A lot of them die because just our temperature is too hot. Now, what they're finding is, as the global temperature continues to increase, some of these viruses are mutating, and they're able to handle higher temperatures. And so the line of thinking is that it is likely that a lot of viruses that we can't get currently are going to adapt to the point where they can handle 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit, and that they can then cause damages, especially when we're dealing with viruses and things that come from animals. We'll be susceptible to things tomorrow that we're not susceptible to today. So that is something that we have to pay attention to. That's why, if you saw, I started a whole new YouTube channel, and I'm doing some other things, interviewing world leaders and scientists and things, particularly on climate change, because if governments don't prepare, sad to say, a lot of people, COVID-19 will look like a day at the playground. It'll just be the beginning, because there's more things that are waiting, that people need to address and be prepared for. So that's my spiel for today. Hope that gave you some information that you can think about. And so if you have, I'm not claiming to be a medical professional, full disclaimer. But if you have any questions that you may want address, I can even find someone in my academic circle that can address them if I don't feel that I have the proper background uh, or sense to deal with that. So yeah, so if you want to get the book where I discuss these things, and I discuss the problem in the prophetic movement with people using conspiracy theory websites, and I literally can, if I wanted to, I can literally prove several people verifiably copied and pasted essentially uh, prophecies from conspiracy theory websites and said the Lord told them that. So I talk about the dangers of that, how we got into all of this foolishness in the prophetic movement, how it needs to get out, and what we need to do in the midst of this crisis, and also give some wisdom for pastors and leaders going forward. So if you want, you can pick that up on Saturday on my website. So that's that. Love you all. I'm going to see. I don't think he's hungry. I think he was just, I don't know what he's about he had a good 6 ounces. If he needs more food, then he may be more athletic than anyone in our family. So I don't know. But I guess we'll find out soon. So love you all. Be blessed. Stay encouraged. Stay safe out there. Stay safe. Love you.